complete record of our meeting. There'll be a queue of speakers. Speakers will be recognized by IT staff. All the speakers are requested to keep themselves muted and video turned off until they are needed to participate. Not following this request will result in IT muting the speakers. Speak clearly, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. Please monitor your time. IT will mute your speaker if you go over, and the next speaker will be recognized. These are very important steps as we participate remotely, so please respect these requests. At this time, I would like to introduce the commission members and the staff present for this meeting. On my left is Commissioner Victor Zarelli, Commissioner, they both are out, myself. On my right, Commissioner Alan Marhost and Commissioner Ron Robbins. And we also have Kim Ritchie, the town planner, and the recording secretary. For the benefits of the commissioners, assuming we are sitting in the council chambers, I will recognize commissioners from left and go to right for comments to avoid multiple conversations at the same time. I will recognize commissioner when it's their turn to speak. Thank you. We'll go into our public hearing. Commissioner Zarelli?
Number one, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right, thank you. Number one, proposed zoning regulation amendment. Town of Rocky Hill proposing to add section 3F zoning policy for reasonable accommodation, Americans with Disability Act and Fair Housing Act, creating a process whereby the Planning and Zoning Commission can evaluate and authorize reasonable accommodations on behalf of individuals, persons, entities, or groups with disabilities as related to residentially used properties. Copies available upon request.
If I may, my name is Kim Ritchie, Town Planner, Rocky Hill. The request that the town is putting forth before the commission this evening stemmed from an application for a zoning variance last year, as a matter of fact, almost over a year ago at this time. And an individual came to us and was very upfront about why they were seeking a variance. And it dealt with disabilities. The individual was very upfront as to what the disabilities were. We did not ask for that information. That is none of the commission's business or the zoning board of appeals business, but this individual was very upfront about that. They used that as part of their hardship, actually, and that raised a legal question with us as staff and the board to talk about what happens if someone comes with a disability, and disabilities are unfortunately temporary, whether it be the person was in an automobile accident, for example, and they have injuries and they will recover from the injuries, or unfortunately life is fleeting, as we know. So that said, we came up with a policy to help individuals that have disabilities, also with respect to Fair Housing Act, to accommodate and not to be discriminatory in our zoning regulations and zoning practices. Because it is a public hearing, I feel I'm obligated to read it for the record. I will try to be as quick as possible. Under section 3F, as in Frank, zoning policy for reasonable accommodation, Americans with Disabilities Act and Fair Housing Act. The purpose: American with Disabilities Act as amended is a federal anti-discrimination statute designed to remove barriers that prevent qualified individuals with disabilities from enjoying the same opportunities available to persons without disabilities. The Fair Housing Act as amended is a federal anti-discrimination statute that prohibits discriminating against a person on the basis of disability by refusing to make reasonable accommodations when necessary to afford the person equal opportunity to use and enjoy a dwelling. And this is respect to residential properties. The FHI and ADA require municipal governments to make reasonable accommodations to policies, practices, or procedures to prevent discrimination on the basis of disability. Reasonable accommodations can include changes, modifications, or adjustments to local laws, ordinances, and regulations that prevent people from disabilities from having an equal opportunity to use and enjoy a dwelling. The Town of Rocky Hill Planning and Zoning Division shall make reasonable accommodations in policies, practices, or procedures when the accommodations are necessary to avoid discrimination on the basis of disability, unless those accommodations would fundamentally alter the nature of the service, program, activity, or cause an undue financial and administrative burden. A reasonable accommodation is a change, exception, or adjustment to a rule, policy, or practice or service that may be necessary for a person with disabilities to have an equal opportunity to use and enjoy a dwelling. 3F2, general provisions. All reasonable accommodation applications that are submitted will be reviewed on an individual basis and independently of all other requests. In evaluating a request for reasonable accommodation, the Commission, in this case, the Planning and Zoning Commission, based upon consultation with the recommendation of staff, shall consider competent, substantial evidence related to the following: whether the reasonable accommodation is necessary because of a disability, whether there is an identifiable relationship or nexus between the requested accommodation of the initial request. Where am I? I think I lost my place. I'm sorry. Nexus between the requested accommodation and the person's needs, whether a sufficient alternative to the specific initial request exists if the initial request is determined not to be reasonable, whether granting the request would change the essential nature of the zoning code as compared to the strict application of the code to the circumstances of request, and whether the request would impose financial or administrative burdens on the town. And there are certain application requirements. Applications seeking such a request for disability under the federal regulations provided by American with Disabilities Act or Fair Housing Act should complete the application for a reasonable accommodation or modification. The applicants may include individuals with disabilities or persons, entities, or groups on behalf of individuals with disabilities. Now, we, as you know, cannot request specific medical information. So we will not be violating HIPAA in any such way. Documentation needed. The Commission is entitled to obtain information that is necessary to evaluate if a requested reasonable accommodation may be necessary because of a disability. They may not ordinarily inquire as to the nature or severity of an individual's disability. However, they may request reliable disability-related information. 1, necessary to verify the person meets the Fair Housing Act, American with Disabilities definition of disability, describes the need accommodated, and shows the relationship between the person's disability and the need for the requested accommodation. I'll explain to that later. An explanation as to the accommodation requested and how granting this request is necessary to accommodate the disability. Proceedings. The date of the receipt for the application shall be determined in accordance with Section 9H2, which is already existing. An incomplete application shall be denied in accordance with Section 9H3. Commission may request reports on the application from various town departments, such as police, fire, sanitary and engineer, building, parks and rec, highway, tax, town manager, open space, conservation, and any other appropriate agencies. A decision on the application shall be rendered within 65 days after the date of receipt of the application, except that the applicant may consent to one or more extensions of such period, provided the total period of such extension shall not exceed 65 days. The decision shall state the name of the owner of record, a description of the premises to which it relates, identify the section of the regulations under which the accommodation was granted or denied, the specific nature of the accommodation or modification, and they may withdraw such application at any time prior to action by the Commission. The action documentation, the Commission shall, whenever it grants or denies an application, state upon its records its reasons for its decision, shall send by certified mail a copy of any decision to the applicant within 15 days of the decision, shall cause the notice of approval or denial to be published in the paper having general circulation in Rocky Hill within 15 days. In any case, with such notice that is not published within the 50-day period, the person who submitted the plan may provide for the publication of such notice within 10 days thereafter. On any application for which the period of approval has expired and on which no action has been taken, the commission shall send a letter of approval to the applicant within 15 days. So send a letter to the applicant within 15 days of the date on which the period for approval expires, and such letter of approval shall state the date on when the accommodation expires. Following approval, the modification or accommodation granted by the commission shall only become effective once it's filed on the land records. That's per state statute 83D. Any approved accommodation or modification will become null and void if it's not recorded within 12 months of the date of approval. However, they can come and get a 6-month extension granted by the commission only. An accommodation shall only authorize that particular use or uses specified in the commission's approval. That's the proposal. I do want to point out that the type of information the commission will probably obtain from an individual or group of individuals would be a letter, for example, from a physician that states Miss Jane Doe requires reasonable accommodation due to her disability. She requires a shed placed on a level surface. Her recovery time may be 6 months to a year. That could be something a letter might state. Or Miss Jane Doe requires reasonable accommodation for an extension of a ramp into the front yard. And that's basically all we can ask. We can't ask why. The reasonable accommodation would have a sunset provision. That's something we would certainly put in a condition for approval. And as I stated before, disabilities typically cease after either recovery or unfortunate death of the individual. I hate to be blunt, but sometimes that is the case. I don't know if there are any questions. This is something fairly new. There's a few towns that do have this type of policy in their ordinances and or regulations. But as I stated before, we did have this issue that came up before the Zoning Board of Appeals in the past. And we did discuss this with our town legal counsel when it did come up last year at this time. And we have run this policy by our town attorney, and they have concurred with it. I don't know if there's any questions or discussion.
Any questions, Commissioner Zarelli? I'll start from.
I have a question. The first question that I would have is, you mentioned conditions and a term, whether it's unfortunate passing of the individual or a certain time frame. Would the commissioner or the commission have to put that condition in place, or would they get guidance from staff and or a lawyer to help us with that process? Because it seems like that we wouldn't be put in a position, a non-legal position. I don't know, it just seems weird that a commissioner would deal with that type of conditioning versus something more official, like a staff recommendation and or a legal representation to do that as guidance.
I think it would be both. I think you would have both. I don't see a lot of these coming in, but I do think it's important. I do think it would be a combination of staff. You may get some of the information in the proof of disability, in that you might get correspondence from a physician that may state, that, for example, Miss Jane Doe's recovery period will be anywhere from 6 months to 18 months at the most. So you can maybe say a 2-year window or something to that effect. So you will get guidance from staff, and I'm sure we'll be getting guidance from our town attorney as well.
Nothing further.
Thank you. Commissioner Morhos?
I'm fine.
Thank you. Commissioner Robbins?
On 3F55, it gives specifics about what should be in a letter of approval. In such letter of approval shall state the date on which the accommodation expires. But what triggers that is for applications for which the period of approval is expired in which no action has been taken. And I'm just curious as to, we have a statement of what should go into a letter of approval when no action has taken place and an expiration has expired. But should we have something similar just for an approval that's been rendered within the time period prior to expiration?
So you're looking for information as far as what to put in the approval letter?
Well, I'm just wondering, it starts off by saying on any application for which the period for approval has expired on which no action has been taken. And then it tells specifically then that the commission shall issue a letter of approval. But what's the inverse of that? If there's an application for which the period of approval hasn't expired and action was taken, whether it be approval or denial, what are the procedures then for action documentation?
Well, if they received approval and they actually proceeded with whatever their accommodation was, their construction of a shed or whatever, they would still have to file something on the land record. So I don't know that there really is anything needed for that. When I was reading this section, I was reading it and I kind of caught myself on the commission shall send a letter of approval to the applicant within 15 days on which the period for approval expired, and such letter of approval shall state the date. It seems like there's too many words here to me. It seems like the wording is off to me.
Yeah.
And it looks like what Commissioner Ryan is asking, maybe what I understood is like you are saying, oh, on any application for which the period of approval has expired.
Yeah, the way I read it is that on any application for which the period of approval has expired and on which no action has been taken, the commission should send a letter of approval to the applicant within 15 days of the date. And it looks like that should be a period. And then, I'm sorry, on 15 days of the date in which the period of approval expired, period. And then that part about in such letter of approval shall state the date on when the accommodation expires. It seems like any approval we give should state the date on which the accommodation expires. That's what I'm saying. So we don't say it anywhere else, but we say it in the negative scenario when something doesn't happen.
That is correct. Any action by the commission, well, any approval by the commission should state whether action was taken or not taken. Any approval by the commission for an accommodation should state when that accommodation expires.
So what I'm thinking is that last part of the sentence, in such letter approval shall state the date on which the accommodation expires, that part of the sentence should maybe go up to 3F51 or up there when we talk about an approval, something like that, so that it's understood that it applies in any approval scenario.
Please.
So maybe Kim, you may want to just break it up into maybe 2 bullet points and just make it easier. What happens if it's denied and what happens if it's approved?
Well, I think this says what happens if it's approved and there's been no action versus what happens if it's approved and there is action. Yeah, when I was reading this, as I'm reading it, it sounded odd to me, so. Okay. So I can work on that.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Just one question. It requires this to be filed on the land records. So in an unfortunate situation, what happens? That somebody will have to take it off or?
Like with subdivision approvals that expire, for example, we file a certificate of expiration. Now, it will have an expiration date on it as a condition, but we would file a certificate of expiration.
Okay, so you guys will have to
Yeah.
keep up with that and
That's
file.
something that process.
Okay, we lost you for a couple of minutes.
Can you, pardon, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you repeat the answer, please?
Okay, concerning the subdivision?
Yeah, so so it's filed on the land records
Yes,
and unfortunate situation happens. Now it's still there. With subdivisions, we know they have to come to the town because they want to get their monies back and deposit and things like that. So that's when town knows what happens, and that's when you can file whatever paperwork needed to, right? In this instance, how will town know?
okay, if I may.
Yeah.
As with subdivisions, we can prepare what's called a certificate of expiration. The certificate that we file as it is will have a expiration date on it
Okay.
as a condition of approval. But we will file an additional certificate of expiration when that date comes up. I also like the idea of maybe notifying people, maybe a month in advance that and it's a matter of tracking on our computer system that something is due to expire, say, a month out.
All right. Any other questions? Any members? If not, I think
I do have correspondence. I did send it to Capital Region Council of Governments because it does require a referral, as this regulation could touch any of the residential properties abutting a town line. So I did have to send it on to CROG. I have correspondence dated August 6th, signed by Caitlin Palmer, Senior Community Development Planner, concerning this referral. Receipt is acknowledged in the above mentioned referral. The comments: the staff of the Regional Planning Commission of the Capital Region Council of Governments has reviewed this zoning referral and finds no apparent conflict with regional plans, the policies, or concerns of neighboring towns. And it went to Newington, Weathersfield, Glastonbury, Cromwell, Berlin, and the Connecticut River Council of Governments as well.
all right. Thank you. Seeing there are no further comments or discussion, can I have a motion, please?
Before I make the motion, I have a question. Do we need to keep this open, or can we close it with the modifications you need to make, Tim, to that number 5 that we talked about?
I would suggest that you probably keep it open, because I'm going to put forth a few processes in here, a little bit more detailed, and you may want to see that. I don't know. That's up to you folks.
Yeah, well, I think we can keep it open, and by that way, whatever changes are, people will have a chance to look at them.
So you folks will have a chance to comment on them for clarifications for especially the 3F5.
So do we motion to table or just leave it open?
Motion to recess.
Recess.
Motion to recess. Motion to recess to public hearing.
Can I have a second?
I'll second that. Do we have a date?
Our next meeting is the third Wednesday in October. October 21.
So Victor, do you want to amend your motion?
Recess it. I motion to recess the public hearing until our next full meeting, which is October 21st, 2020.
I'll second.
Thank you, Alan.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes. We're moving on to item B.
Public hearing number 2, proposed zoning regulation amendment. Town of Rocky Hill proposing to modify sections of the Rocky Hill zoning regulations related to the town center district. Add to section 4B1, residential units in one or more mixed-use buildings or as part of a mixed-use project. Add 4E1, compliance with section 8B, dimensional exceptions, and 8C, design considerations of these regulations, as well as the 2015 Plan of Conservation and Development, will allow for the flexibility to create a substantial, walkable, pedestrian-friendly development. Section 4E4, to modify the process of approval so as to require a mandatory pre-application followed by a site plan and/or special permit process and a financial guarantee. Modify sections 6C4 and 6E2, area and bulk requirements, density, setbacks, minimum separation between buildings, floor area ratios for active adult housing and housing for the elderly under a special permit process. Copies available upon request.
All right. Kim, you want
Now,
to?
I'm not sure how you want me to do this because the majority of the language is existing now. What we're essentially doing is the main focus here is the modification of the process of the town center zone. The process of getting something approved in the town center zone is a rather arduous one at best now, with a plan development, a zone change, site plan special permit process. We had discussed this a few times, and we were talking about the mandatory pre-application, which is something that we certainly encourage applicants to come in and discuss with the commission so they can get some good feedback. Obviously, it's non-binding on the commission, non-binding on the applicant, but you certainly can give good feedback and get a good idea of what applicants are looking to do. So it would be a mandatory pre-app, as well as a site plan or a special permit, which is the underlying, whatever the underlying use is. We also, when we discussed this, we were talking about, and I think Ron Robbins brought up under section 4E1, the language where they talk about other sections of the zoning regulations, section 8B, dimensional exceptions and design considerations. I think the word he uses was redundancy concerning that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that does talk about, it refers you to other sections of our existing zoning regulations where there are some design criteria that must be met. So that may be something that we eliminate because it is covered elsewhere. One of the things that was discussed in the first draft before we set the public hearing on the town center modifications was the uses, where we talked about including active adult uses and including I believe it was housing for the elderly or assisted living. Now, based upon last discussion we have strictly residential units in one or more mixed-use buildings. And then I've added, or as part of a mixed-use project. Now, a mixed-use building would have both non-residential and residential uses, whereas a mixed-use project may have separate buildings with separate uses. So that's something that's different in this draft. I don't know if there's other, a lot of the language that you see in front of you is already in the regulations. And I welcome anybody that's watching the meeting, if they want copies, I'll gladly send that to them. I didn't have any requests. Though I did share them with our Director of Economic Development also, who is in touch with people interested in the town center zone almost on a weekly basis, so.
All right.
I don't know if you have any questions or want me to go into any more detail.
Yeah, I'll start. Maybe I should ask if we have anyone in the public who would like to comment on this proposed regulations. And I see we don't have any, so
I
I'll
think we
open it up.
do, we do. We do. We
I-
do have Mr. Ciccarello is asking. to-
Oh, okay. So you okay. All right.
Yeah, thank you. Ed Ciccarello, 40 Riverview Road. Thank you, Dimple. The language that I heard was walkable, and that's great. And I was wondering if we could add pedestrian and bicycle friendly, or include bicycles at the same time to make it a little bit more of a complete street thing. That was my only comment. Thank you.
Okay. That is so noted.
All right. Anyone else who would like to speak from the public? All right. Now, seeing none, I will go to Commissioner Zarelli.
In just reviewing what's going to be eliminated as part of this, can you go over why, and maybe I missed it, can you go over why all the master plan stuff was being taken out? It seems as though Planometrics, who guided us when we did this at the time, wanted that in there, and I'm just wondering what's the difference between what we're proposing and versus having this whole master plan submittal in here.
One of the ideas is with the master plan, they wanted to do a compilation of properties for areas in the town center district. We don't see through what we've been dealing with in our office or in the economic development office, we haven't seen, for one, we haven't seen a lot of interest in the town center. We've seen interest in the town center area expanding from its present configuration. But that hasn't happened. Those requests haven't come in, but we have a lot of conversations on that. The process itself for getting something developed has actually been hindered because of our multi-step process to develop anything in the town center. Even if you're taking an existing building and converting it from, say, a residential property to a non-residential property or a mixed-use property, you have to go through the master plan, the zone change, the site plan, the special permit. And people would rather not do that. So in looking at that, that's what we've proposed. We proposed a simpler process. You still have the village district review. So the design elements would still be forwarded onto a village district consultant. That has not changed. The timeframes for approval have not changed. You do have the opportunity to see an application during the pre-application process, so you can provide more guidance under your current regulations to the applicant or a potential applicant up front. And you may weed out some projects. You may actually give appropriate guidance to other projects by having that process. So we think this is a fair process. I'm trying to
Great, thank
encourage people to come in. And
Yeah.
do that.
Makes sense. Nothing further.
Thank you. Commissioner Morales?
I'm okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Robbins?
Just to elaborate on my previous comment from the last meeting, another option, if it helps, if you still wanted to keep the numbering system the same, so you don't have to change all the numbers, is if we made that statement more comprehensive, we could say something to the effect of compliance with the special provisions within this section 4E in combination with section 8B dimensional exceptions and 8C design considerations, these regulations. And then that way we're tying in why we have that general statement in 4E1. But it just never flowed with me that we're talking about section 8B in the general statement for 4E. But if we can link it and say, if you comply with it, if we take these special provisions and then we can combine them with 8B and 8C, then we can work towards that goal as stated here. Throw in Ed's comment about bikeable.
And we do have that under pedestrian orientation, Ed. Under 4E2 design objectives, where it says pedestrian orientation, we talk about benches, trash barrels, bicycle racks. So we're trying to introduce these elements.
Any further comments?
I do want to state on the record that while there's no requirement, since we're doing a rather broad regulation amendment, I did mail out the legal notice to property owners within the town center district. I did so last week. There was no need to notify CROG because the property does not touch the borders of our town with another community, with another town. So there was no need to send it to CROG. We haven't had any feedback from others. So it's your desire. It's up to you whether or not you want to table this or move forward.
So I had a couple of comments, and one was to clarify, we are putting in mixed-use buildings, and we are also introducing mixed-use project. And then we have another mixed-use development. So I think what we should do is clarify these things so that when somebody proposes, maybe under the guidance of mixed-use development, and then development could be mixed-use buildings or mixed-use project, and what those two are. Because I remember, I think, was that here? We had talked about percentage of like housing or residential versus commercial. And I forgot where it is right now. Is that in the strikeout or somewhere else in our regulation? Because we wanted to make sure when somebody proposes, it's not 80% residential and then you have something on a smaller scale like commercial.
I believe there was no percentages. That was not in here. That was not in here to start with.
Was there any percentage?
There was discussion about it when this regulation was being drafted originally.
Okay.
There was a discussion on that. And the discussion per Glenn Schauder of Planometrics was to be more flexible, and that because of the flexibility in the regulation, it allows the applicant to be more flexible. It allows the town to be more flexible.
Okay. All right. So I think clarifying those would help, like, unless other commissioners, I mean, you guys think that that is covered.
No, I think maybe a definitions of each.
Right, like what they are, because we have some definitions here, what we are talking about, like affordable housing, landscape areas, and you know. So, that's what I had, and I think, yeah, I mean, this streamlines the process. I mean, it's
I think adding the definitions just for clarity purposes, I think that's.
right. We can just. Any other comments from anyone? If not, can I have a motion to,
Motion to recess the public hearing to our next meeting, October 21st, for the reasons of considering the clarification of 4E1 to Commissioner Robbins' comments, as well as the clarification definitions for Commissioner Desai
I'll second that.
and all staff
Oh,
comments.
all right, so we have second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to item 3, which is a public comment period. I think we have Ed Ciccarelli who would like to speak. So what I like to do is, Ed, I know you have a lengthy document to give information and talk about. So maybe if you can briefly describe what you are trying to do and what it is, and then, we can put you up for your own section at the next public hearing. So then you can have a, rather than having like 2, 3, 5 minutes, you'll have, some time to discuss what you're proposing.
That's great, Dimple. That's what I was going to suggest myself as well. You all did receive I'm calling it the 2020 assessment of the Rocky Hill Plan of Conservation and Development. Did everybody get that?
If I may, I received this and their packet went out.
Oh,
So I didn't get this out in the packet because the packet
Okay.
had gone out
Okay.
first. I
okay.
do want to state, Ed, that they did get the Walk Bike Rocky Hill, the maps that you so nicely put together for the town.
Mhm.
So that did go out in their packet. The other did not. When I did have my preliminary conversation with the chairman prior to the meeting, as I do with every meeting, we did discuss what you had sent me, and I do have copies for them that will go out to them for our next meeting.
Great, no problem. Thank you. Well, if I could just then summarize, Dimple, I am currently not on a town committee. And I was wondering, number one, if I could ask you, Dimple, is the plan implementation committee, is that still in effect, and is that meeting?
It is in effect. It hasn't been dissolved. So it is in effect. It is not meeting, but again, when Kim and I talked this afternoon, I said I would like to open it up again and meet. So what we can do is actions like you or any information that you bring, including any of the general public, we can talk about those at our peak meetings. So,
Great. So,
yeah.
so perhaps that if I can volunteer, I mean, I'd like to volunteer as the founder of Walk Bike Rocky Hill. One of the things that I took away from the Plan of Conservation and Development was that there was a suggestion that we establish a bicycle committee. And so in 2017, I established a Walk Bike Rocky Hill Facebook group. And now we have over 500 people. So there is a lot of interest in what's going on with the trails, a lot of interest in what's going on in regards to bicycling. I'm also very interested in, wayfinding signs and gateway signs that I've put together some PowerPoints already on these subjects. And my concern is that I need to find the way to get these things completed. I think some of these things are very low hanging fruit when we talk about signs that could beautify our town and educate and help people get around. If you look at Berlin, they put new signs on their and on their boundary lines, and they're beautiful. So it says a lot. So you are right. I did develop an assessment, and I'd like to go over that with you at some other time. So if we could set up a meeting, maybe I could do that with Kim, or
Yeah, I think we can discuss and see when, when it's appropriate. And then I think we have received like black and white copies. So I don't know if that can be emailed or something. So by that way, we can have a color copy that we can see.
I can send this to you in color, have this in color also.
Okay. So,
When you say color, are you talking about other maps or something?
Your trail maps, your Walk Bike Rocky Hill maps.
Oh, yeah.
that you
Oh,
put
no, I was
together.
just,
They went out in their packets, but they did so in black and white because of our copier.
okay.
So,
And I was just speaking just specifically about the assessment, because that in essence is everything that I'm concerned about in regards to walking and biking in Rocky Hill.
Yep.
So if I could be either on the next planning and zoning meeting, or if you're going to have a PIC meeting, that might even be better, that if we're around the table and we can have a little bit more of a discussion, we have more time.
right. And I think when I talked to Kim, I think what we had said is maybe today you just give a brief, and you already gave that. And then I think the PIC might be an appropriate place where you just discuss and let everybody discuss freely, throw ideas and all that kind of stuff before we bring it to a larger group like P&Z, and then on to council later. So I think that might be a good idea, in restarting PIC and take this as a first topic.
That would be fantastic. I appreciate that. And that's all I have then.
All right. So
Thank you for your time.
yep. So I think you can work with Kim, and then we will discuss like what when we want to have the PIC meeting.
Good.
set
Great.
up.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Going on to item 4, consent agenda. Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll
Second.
second that.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to agenda item 5A. So I think that's
We're in recess.
those both
We're
are
in recess on both
so-
A and B. Yep.
Yep. All
We're on
right.
6A.
6A, zoning enforcement.
we've been dealing with a lot of noise issues with respect to roosters in particular. We've had a few of those complaints. So we're in consultation with a few livestock auctions and farms with respect to relocation of roosters, believe it or not. We've also dealt with a lot of odor complaints recently with people composting. If it's in a commercial area, if they're not registered with the state, that's a problem. So we'll be contacting Department of Energy and the Environment on those. When we also have our standard blight things we're dealing with as well. So I don't know if there's anything in particular that you have.
No, I mean, any members? I mean, you guys have seen any? No, we. All right, 6B.
We do not have any minor modifications, but I do have another meeting I need to bring up to the commission's attention. I did talk to Chairman Desai about that today, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman. The town attorney and I have discussed the need for an executive session. And seeing as we set aside the fourth Wednesday of the month, this would be concerning pending litigation, a status conference with respect to the Sam Center LLC and the REL Inc., which was for the hotel and the restaurant. We're talking about September 23rd, next Wednesday, either at 6 p.m. or 6:30. And one of the things we were also discussing, the chairman and myself, was about the need, in order to have an executive session, it's strictly between the town attorney, the commission members, and staff. There is no public involved except to go into executive session and a motion to come out of executive session. And if any actions are taken, it has to be done in a public forum. My thoughts are, because the requirement is 25 people or less in our town council room, and we certainly would be 25 people or less, is that we have an in-house session on the 23rd. The council room has been set up with chairs at least 6 feet apart, and with fewer people than 25, we certainly can make that distance greater. We ask that people would wear a mask. I don't know how commission members feel about an in-house meeting. We've had a few in-house meetings with some boards and commissions already at the town. The town council will be having their first in-house meeting next week. Zoning Board of Appeals has met twice already in the town hall. So one, what are your thoughts on an executive session next Wednesday? The time, 6 p.m. or 6:30, and in-house, or I have some legal concerns with doing a executive session by way of Zoom.
So I discussed this with Kim, and I also think in-house makes, much more sense. I mean, because there'll be maps and things like that, plans that, we'll be looking at. So I think it's easier to communicate right when you are face to face. And again, town council chamber is large enough, to meet the social distancing requirements. And I think Kim was going to follow up with attorney to see how this the legality of recording this, because as you know, the executive session, those are not recorded, nobody writes it, nothing happens. But here it will be recorded. So now you have a record, even though public will not have access.
No, the record is only the motion going into and the motion coming out, but not the actual discussion. That would not be recorded.
Yeah, you would turn off the camera for that.
Yeah, that would not be recorded.
Okay, so they will. So then we will have to log back.
No, if you're
okay.
if
So
you're
they will-
in-house,
So they will
the concern with executive sessions in the Zoom format is, I'm not going to have the whole neighborhood standing back at me while I'm sitting here talking to folks, but we don't want even the appearance of having others have the potential to communicate with any of the commission members or staff or the town legal counsel while an executive session is going on. So I feel that in the interest of legality, and I'm not an attorney, but I think having an executive session in person would make it a clean process.
How does members feel, Commissioner Zarelli?
I concur. We should be in-house. We'll be fine with all the rules that you already indicated. And 6 o'clock is fine with me.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Marcos?
I prefer 6 if we can, and everyone in the room will be wearing masks, correct?
They must wear a mask, yes.
Nobody getting there and saying, well, I don't feel like doing this now.
They have to
seen-
wear it.
we've
They
seen
have
that
to
on
by
the
law
news.
wear a mask.
I'm sorry?
They have to by law wear a mask.
Okay.
Commissioner Robbins?
It's fine with me, and I could do 6.
Okay. Thank you. So Kim, we can set something up for 6.
Okay, very good. I will
Now-
do that, so,
We don't need motion for this, right? That's, or do we need motion to set these up?
you can certainly do that. We
Okay.
already have special meetings set aside, but I would do that and state on the record what it's for.
Yeah. Commissioner Zarelli?
Motion for an executive session on September 23rd at 6 PM in council chambers to discuss pending litigation.
No, second, please.
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Communications?
I already mentioned the maps that Ed put together. And the town, I'm sure appreciates it. I'm sure Parks and Rec appreciates it, as do we here in Community Development Services. He's done a fantastic job. And I would certainly recommend to Planning and Zoning Commission, who appoints members of the PIC committee, that you have the ability to appoint not only various people that serve on boards and commissions, but Ed did indicate that he at present is not serving on a commission, and you may want to consider him as an appointment for the PIC committee when you decide to set up the membership. And I say that because PIC is made up of various boards and commission members, and they had reappointments this year for all of the boards and commissions. So the majority of the PIC committee members are no longer with those commissions.
Mhm.
So this commission, Planning and Zoning, will have to evaluate which boards and commissions you want representation from. I have sent a few emails, as I discussed with Dimple earlier today, to those boards and commission staff members to forward on, and did send reminders to them. And we've gotten no feedback from them. So we will need members to serve. We also have in your packet the Governor's Lamont's Executive Order 9A, and there was another one that just came out, 9B, but 9A actually extends the executive orders through November 9th. And that outdoor dining, I believe, is extended, and I don't know if it's in this one or the next one, through November 12th. Of course, I can't imagine people sitting outside if it's too cold, but we can't change that. We're still working under executive orders with respect to outdoor dining. And hopefully next year we can get back to some sense of normalcy there. But
Kim, question for you about that. As it starts getting colder, do restaurant owners have to consider if they want heaters? Do they have to talk to the town about that? And are
we've
they
already
getting guidance?
discussed that as far as staff goes. We in zoning work with the fire marshal's office, the building department, and the health district. They all have to sign off before we sign off. And we've already discussed tents have to be certified to a certain rating now. But we have grave concerns if tents have sides, and then if you put a heater in that tent. So we're in the process of discussing that right now with the fire marshal's office.
All right. Do you want to discuss about PIC? Like, I know maybe we can set something up. I don't know, probably sometime in October.
How often do
We
they
have
meet? Quarterly?
October 7th. We can, typically it was going to be the first Wednesday of the month.
Okay.
I don't know if Wednesday is a good day for you, Chairman
Yeah,
Desai.
yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
So,
My concern though is members. I will send something out again, or what I can do is write something up and send it on to you for your
Yep.
signature.
Yep.
And we can certainly forward it on through you to the various departments,
yep.
down to the boards and commissions, and possibly even the town council, to see if we can get a member from them to sit in.
Yeah, and I think at least we should start October 7th. So let's just start it and have it in motion, and then
Yeah.
we can keep on adding members as they come.
Perfect.
And now I had a question on that. So I'm looking at POCD, and there are action steps, and I don't know what was the, I know the leader was P&Z. The partners, we had staff and what is TC? Was that town
Council?
council, right? Town council and staff. So,
Well, we have different,
zoning.
depending on what the issue is.
yep,
We have those staff members that were invited to attend was myself, Bob Alvarado with respect to inland wetlands water courses, environmental issues. We had the director of Parks and Recreation, and
Yep.
we also had the economic development director.
right.
If there are others that you wish to invite, that is fine.
Okay.
But those were the individuals that we had.
Okay.
Now, Ed Ciccarello, who may or may not still be here, he does also serve in capacity for the Historical Society.
Mhm.
So that. may
So
serve
he can
as-
serve from that
Yeah.
from that group and then bring in these items.
Yeah.
Yeah, because one thing we discussed, and this is for the other members, is creating like new committees and adding committees on top of committees. So it's like rather than that, just have a join and the pick and bring the ideas about what Ed Ciccarello is talking about. So, all right, let's move on. We don't have any bills, right?
Well, we do have in your packet was also the possible special session issues that were, excuse me, going to be coming up with respect to zoning and some affordable housing. This hasn't really come up as of yet. And they may be raised and they may not go anywhere, or they may be raised and be put forth as laws that municipalities will need to follow with respect to accessory apartments or affordable housing, the cottage food industry, which is already amongst us now. There are regulations concerning cottage food industries. So these are some things that may be coming down the road. We don't know. We thought they might have been considered this fall, but because of some of the other more nationally renowned issues that the country's dealing with, these have kind of taken a back seat until the next session, I believe.
So I see cost. Is cost part of this? Are they? Because I know it's an organization. So is it also behind this legislation?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been doing, there's a series of webinars that we've been participating in with this group to basically to educate ourselves a little more on what may be coming down the road. So hopefully when it comes, if it comes, and some of these ideas certainly are good ones, that, we're ready for it, so.
Now, I mean, in your webinars, are there any concerns or anything like that from other communities? Because I know small council of small towns is much broader in terms of geographic locations and things like that. So, are there other concerns from other communities who are part of this, from Fairfield or from other areas?
Yeah, well, I've dealt with more people around this area right
Okay.
now. But I'm sure as this gets going, we're going to hear from more towns as far as what their thoughts are. A lot of what's happening with respect to the affordable housing, they talk about community character and how communities should not be using that type of term in their regulations or in their ordinances because they feel, a lot of people feel that's discriminatory because what is your community character versus, say, a city of Hartford's community character? And who are we to say that, you meet the character or you don't meet the character with respect to what you're proposing and building? A lot of it may be word choices and semantics. I think our mayor has sat in on one of these. I don't know if it was put on by the Council of Small Towns, but I know for a fact that I think our manager, myself, Dave Pomberg, and Lisa Murata, the mayor, did sit on one webinar, and I think she did express some concerns.
Yep.
Over some of the wording that was it. And I don't believe the wording is actually being proposed at this time. I think it's just concepts right now. But if these types of ideas go forward, we certainly may get some wording that may be put forth in model regulations that municipalities may have to adopt. So we want to pay close attention to what's going on.
Yeah, I think it's good to discuss this so that it just doesn't come sudden and say, this is what's going on. And the commission members are found, off guard as to what is being proposed and where it's heading and things like that. So I think that's why I'm raising all these things and trying to get out like what other municipalities are thinking and what their concerns are or what they're supporting and things like that, so that we can also think about and see, how it fits in, like with our goals and objectives and POCD. Any members, commissioners, do you have comments on this? Commissioner Zarelli, any, nothing? All right. Commissioner Marhos,
Nope.
Commissioner Robbins?
No, nothing here.
All right. So if you don't have anything else, Kim?
No, I would just ask people to review this and keep in mind, think about what we've done thus far. Think about our POCD and how these ideas and concepts relate. And because we'll be discussing these down the road. So I would just ask people to hang on to this because we will be talking about them again.
All right. Motion to adjourn.
Before I place the motion, Kim, question for you. At our last meeting, we had we had a public meeting about 150 Dividend Road LLC, and they said that they would come back to you the next day with a determination of whether they were going to pull or not. Did they pull their application?
They withdrew their application. We have correspondence in the file withdrawing their application. And it was based upon the requirement of sidewalks along the frontage.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Right.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
We'll see you.
Take
Thank you.
care.